Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Josh Owen. I'm the Vignelli Distinguished Professor of Design and Director of the Vignelli Center for Design Studies. Tonight marks the final event of the 22-23 academic year's Vignelli Design Conversations series, presented by Design Milk and RIT's Magic Center, and made possible in part by the generosity of RIT alumnus Chris Bailey and Bailey Brand Consulting. I'd like to begin tonight by offering my gratitude to RIT's Magic Center and their outstanding team of faculty, staff, and students, as well as our interpreters for this evening, Freya O'Donoghue and Anna Walton, for their good work. Rochester Institute of Technology's Vignelli Center for Design Studies is an international hub for education, research, collaboration, and advocacy, which expands the scope of the programs in the College of Art and Design's School of Design. The facility houses the archive of renowned designers Lella and Massimo Vignelli, whose works are icons of international design. The center and archives sit within RIT's College of Art and Design, which was built on the traditional territory of the Onondaga, or people of the Great Hill. In English, they are known as Seneca people, the keepers of the Western Door. They are one of the 6 sovereign nations that make up the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We honor the land on which RIT was built and recognize the unique relationship that the indigenous stewards have with this land. That relationship is the core of their traditions, cultures, and histories. We recognize the history of genocide, colonization, and assimilation of indigenous people that took place on this land. Mindful of these histories, we work towards understanding, acknowledging, and reconciling. As stewards of history and content, we must acknowledge and seek to learn from our context, bad and good, ugly and beautiful. This applies to the Vignelli Center as with any archive. The Vignellis taught us that design is a systematic framework for solving the world's most intractable problems. If recent designs have taught us anything, it's that while we as humans are adaptable, our societies and systems continue to have significant flaws. We're at a point when we need to have difficult discussions and work to create a new balance in the world. In this, design must continue to play a critical role. As a director, I aim to make the Vignelli Center even more accessible and applicable by bringing in stimulating guest contributors from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds who help us to consider design in innovative ways. The Vignelli's Design as One philosophy leaves us with a universal message that design is a lens through which we can envision a more inclusive and a more sustainable future. This evening, we are delighted to welcome entrepreneur and design aficionado John Edelman to join us in a live, informal conversation. John is an experienced board member with a demonstrated history of working in the design industry. He's skilled in modern furniture, retail, textiles, finish, and renovation. As an independent consultant, his expertise in strategic growth is enhanced by an innate understanding of how people express themselves through consumer choices across a broad range of contract, trade, and lifestyle industries and product types. He purchased the company of his dreams, Heller, in May of 2022, serving as president and CEO while steering the future of this iconic furnishings brand. But that's not where his story began. He spent 14 years at Edelman Leather, including 6 as president and CEO. John's leadership approach was defined by his family's principles of authenticity and doing well by doing good. Along with John McPhee, he re-envisioned the company. Soon after, he turned his family's namesake brand into a global trademark by expanding into 4 luxury lifestyle categories: private aviation, hospitality, corporate interiors, and residential interiors, before helping facilitate the sale to Knoll Incorporated in 2007. In 2010, John purchased Design Within Reach with McPhee. He revitalized the retailer, turning it into the world leader in authentic modern design by eliminating knockoffs, repairing vendor relationships, and retraining sales teams. Then, adding trade and contract divisions, expanding product development, and opening new DWR studios. In 2014, Herman Miller Incorporated purchased the renowned DWR, and John stayed on as CEO of both DWR and Herman Miller Consumer Group before departing in 2019. John is highly regarded by the design community. He sits on the Chilowich Board of Directors, as well as being the executive chairman of Krypton Fabrics. In the past, he served on the Board of Trustees for DIFA and currently serves on the Board of Design Leadership Network and the Be Original America's Board of Directors. John is also the co-founder of beverage brand Fourth and Pride Vodka, which donates 5% of their profits to LGBTQ+ organizations, fully integrating his business acumen with lifelong advocacy work. At the end of May 2022, he was bestowed an honorary doctorate from the New York School of Interior Design. He's a graduate of Manhattanville College with a BA focused in liberal arts, proficient in Portuguese, Italian, French, and Spanish. Please join me in a warm Vignelli Center welcome for John Edelman. Now, we are done with the formalities.
Yeah, you sure that was me?
John really wanted tonight to be an informal discussion, so I'm very pleased that we could offer this platform and have a frank discussion about some of the exciting pieces of his career, some of which we can link directly to the Vignellis themselves, so very exciting conversation to be had. And I'm really excited in particular about talking about Heller, but before we get into that and the Vignellis, I thought I'd back up for the audience and ask you a question about your upgrowing. You're growing up in the household you lived in. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, no problem. Well, thank you for the beautiful introduction. Sure. And I'm so proud to be, at the Vignelli Center and the Rochester Institute of Technology. It's a great honor, and you guys are all so lucky to be a part of this. So I grew up in the woods of Connecticut on a horse farm. With the youngest of 6 children. We had 11 dogs, 15 horses, and kind of a wild family. My parents moved all the kids when I was 2 years old from the West Village of Manhattan to this 50-acre compound in Connecticut. So half the kids were raised in the city and were more sophisticated, and half of us were country kids doing our thing. And growing up, we were surrounded by design. And when you're surrounded by something and it's all you know, it's very hard to realize what's around you. There were lights by the famous Italian company Floss, mixed with old masters paintings. My parents were lucky enough to work with Andy Warhol before he was famous, pre-pop Andy. So we had Andy Warhol collages and paintings around the house, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just normal. Everybody had those types of things. We had lighting that Andy had actually painted the exterior of the white lights. And there were 11 dogs running through the house, and there were 6 kids, and there were parties and entertainment. And we just treated it like a normal environment. But we all worked. We worked all the time.
So your parents owned a leather company.
They eventually owned a leather company that they bought when I was around 13. They started. So before that, they were in the leather business for shoes. And my father started a shoe company because he thought he was an expert in shoes with my brother. I have a brother named Sam Edelman. Does anybody hear of Sam Edelman Shoes? It's a fashion brand. And he got to start with my dad, who thought he knew how to make shoes. It took about 10 years to start the company to bankrupt the company. And then by 1982, that company had finished, was bankrupt. And so my father sold a very beautiful Mercedes he had, and he used that money with my mother to start Edelman Leather. So in 1982, my father was 53, my mother was probably 50. And so they started a little bit late in life and created this amazing brand. And since the other kids had left the house, all summer long I'd be in the warehouse sorting hides, feeling leather, and learning that industry from the ground up. I loved it, but I didn't understand necessarily the ramifications.
So obviously your hands-on experience led to other opportunities for you.
Yeah, I left the family. I went to work with my brother. I spent 8 years in the shoe business. I lived in Brazil, I lived in China, I learned Portuguese in Brazil, and I became the #1 shoe salesman. I sold 2 million pairs of shoes in 1 year, doing private label and those kinds of things at a very young age. But I just didn't really like it. The fashion industry is exciting, but it's temporary. And I had been raised with the leather in the home, where I wanted things that would be made and last forever. And when I met my wife, my future wife, she said, your father wants you to go back into the shoe business, into the leather business with them. They could use you, and you don't own anything in the shoe business with your brother, and you don't really like it. And I made the decision to leave my brother and go into the family business. And it was, completely different. And I talk about something all the time, if you can speak in superlatives and tell the truth, you've won. And I always believed that our family's leather was the best leather in the world. And we fought every day to prove that. And that's so much more gratifying than selling a ballerina slipper that, is going to be thrown away in 3 months. And I just got excited about this new industry called interior design.
So tell us about the arc of your career from there.
Well, so I didn't know anything about interior design. I was in the shoe business. And I was a terrible student. I failed French 1, I think, 3 times. But when I went to Brazil, I learned Portuguese in 6 weeks by ear. So I found I learned it differently than other people. And when I joined the leather business, I started going to the flea markets in New York City on 26th Street. And I fell in love with modern. And I started collecting modern. And I knew that a Saarinen chair that had 4 casters versus 5 was a different era before safety concerns. And I knew where to look underneath to spot an authentic piece from a knockoff. And I leveraged that learning to be able to speak to a Gensler or the great design firms and speak their language, because almost every firm used those iconic modern pieces. And then I leveraged that relationship to get into Herman Miller, to be the first leather ever graded into Herman Miller. Now, the company was tiny when I joined, and it had a huge reputation. And that's the dream in business, right? When a business has a bigger reputation than the business, because you can catch up. And I said to my family one day, after being there for about 4 years, I think we have a chance to be a lifestyle brand, not just a supplier to a certain segment. And we made the best product in the world, so why would it just be for residential? My concept was, our clients should wake up and have Edelman Leather on their headboard. When they take their private jet to work, it should be on their private jet. When they arrive at the office, it should be Edelman Leather in the office. When they sleep at the Four Seasons that night, there should be leather there, et cetera. And so rather than attacking one market, we attacked one customer and became the only leather company and almost the only textile company in interior design that thought that way. And we ended up growing the business with really equal shares, 25, 25, 21, 25, residential, contract, hospitality, and aviation. It was pretty cool. So one day we'd be in a private jet facility working with Bloomberg on his jet with his designers. The next day it'd be Gensler for a law firm. It would be a residential client coming into a showroom. So it was thrilling. It was, every day was different, and every day we grew.
So I want to dig in a little bit to your attraction to furniture and to modern design. I mean, I know how you became interested in it, but what was it about furniture design and modernism that really drew you towards DWR?
Modern is the opposite of fashion shoes, right? Modern is forever. Modern is aesthetically pleasing, designed for a purpose, no ego in the design, and it can go anywhere. So you can take this chair and put it in an empty warehouse by itself with no accoutrement, and it looks perfect. You can put it in a penthouse with old masters' paintings. You can put it in a barn, and it belongs forever. Modern is forever. There's no temporary about modern. Temporary is contemporary. And so by collecting modern and working in that high quality industry of leather, I just thought the two combined would work. And I just fell in love with modern. I can't explain it. And it was all from the flea markets. Like if they had taught me about this in school, it would have gone over my head. I wouldn't have gotten it. But learning it on the street, learning it like out in the parking lot in New York City in the cold and turning chairs over. My wife has 1,000 pictures of me turning chairs over and looking at the bottom. It just worked for me.
Well,
And then it wove into leather, so I could speak to design firms. When I went to work with Herman Miller, I knew more about their product than they did, and eventually got graded in there. When Knoll bought our company, I knew more about their product than they did. And Design Within Reach was a natural extension of everything I had done thus far. I learned retail in shoes. I learned design at Edelman Leather. And then when I learned design, I also learned about modern. John McPhee, my business partner for 30 years, and I were the unlikely candidates to run Design Within Reach. We weren't really retailers. We weren't really furniture people, right? We were from leather. But somehow our partner thought we were the right people. And we decided to go back to what I said, use superlatives to create the world leader in authentic modern design. So that's what led us there.
So, I mean, it's very interesting to hear you talk about this. And it seems like with the hands-on upbringing that you had, being really embedded in materials and technology and making, transitioning to collecting is a lot like having those sensibilities applied, right? You sort of
well, you appreciate
connect
the
with
detail.
the objects because you can appreciate the details. Yeah,
and it's also, if you don't learn well in one environment and learn well in a new environment, you want to dive in deeper. I'm a watch collector. You guys can look at my watch video on Hodinkee. The tiniest detail changes on a watch change the value, change everything about it, change the aesthetic. And it works with everything in design. Like, you go to your office, and there's all beautiful things. One small change, one wrong color, and they don't belong. That's pretty thrilling.
I want to talk a little bit about how you reshaped DWR. You brought in designers. You shaped the company by changing the lifeblood of the company in some ways. Tell us about how you did that.
I'll take one step before.
Okay.
So if you Google John Edelman, Design Within Reach, the first article that comes up is the New York Times from January of 2010. And they had come to interview me because I got the job. I was all excited, Design Within Reach, my fantasy company. And they came to interview me, and I thought the article was going to be heroic. Edelman comes in, CEO of Design Within Reach, greatest choice in the world, going to change everything. And the article was, is there a solution within reach? Right, the company was failing. And the picture, instead of me, where they had come to photograph me, was of Alan Heller, holding the classic Bellini chair over his head, looking at the bottom, which I've done 1,000 times, seeing that the company had made a knockoff of his chair. Now, guys, I have been the president of Be Original Americas. I'm the permanent ambassador to Be Original Americas and on the board. I fight for authenticity every single day. And the company that I had just become the CEO of was copying things. And we took over the company January 4th, 2010. I visited in California, and I visited Alan in February of 2010. Went up to his office, and I said, Alan, you are 100% correct. I'm so sorry. I didn't do it, but we're done. We'll never copy again. And we flushed all the copies out through the outlets, not even online, and formed this relationship with Alan Heller to move forward. So the first things first, no knockoffs. It's like one rotten apple spoils the whole deal. One knockoff kills everything. So that was a rule. The company had stopped its catalog. I don't know if any of you have seen a Design Within Reach catalog. We mailed 10 million a year at my peak. And I brought the catalog back. We cobbled one together with this tiny crew. Nick, who works with me now, can know what it's like to have a tiny crew make miracles. We mailed our first catalog, I think, in April of joining the business. And it picked sales back up. Then we realized that we were buying items and reselling them. So we're buying Knoll, we're buying Herman Miller, and the reason they had done knockoffs is because it's not profitable to do that. The gross margin, the profitability is too low. So rather than copying, I'm like, why don't we make product and hire designers, great designers, to design for us, and we'll source it. And we did. And we had everything from Cleaner Atlason to Norm Architects to Nathan Young, to a whole crew of designers that we'd bring in. They design to a brief, we'd produce it, but in the catalog and in the stores, it wasn't private label. It was a bed by Nathan Young or a bed by Jeffrey Burnett. And we'd tell the designer story first. Jeffrey Burnett, downhill skier, former dirt bike racer, was so banged up that he had to design the most comfortable chair in the world, the flight recliner, for himself, and we'd carry it. And no one was doing that. No one celebrated the designer first and then the product. In the beginning, they'd bring me the copy, and it'd be like, oh, this chair has been kiln dried at X, da, da, da. And I'm like, oh my God. Let's make them excited. So a short, memorable, repeatable story about the designer, and then some details about the product. And it wasn't being done. And the designers didn't have a voice either. So they had no way to become household names. And we made people famous. You know, imagine, we'd mail 1 million copies of a catalog at once, and House Beautiful magazine was like at 700,000. Dwell was at 300,000. So we were the biggest voice in modern and telling the stories. So we refer to it as a magazine a lot. And the designers were so thankful they were knocking down our doors to work with us because we celebrated them. And we hope to do that again with the current business, Heller, but always celebrate the designer. That's how you create the long-term value of the product.
So I'm curious to know where that sort of thought process came from. I mean, it's more typical within European design markets to put designer first and to celebrate the designer. Were you looking at any other models when you sort of started to point the spotlight on designers? It was, I agree.
Way too sophisticated for me to look at other models.
Well, it was brand new in the United States, as you
You know, my father and mother met in college. My father was the first man to go to Sarah Lawrence College. And they're obviously were the oldest married couple as they met there. And my father studied acting. And when he came into my grandfather's leather business, he used his acting skills and created these like amazing stories about the leather. Like romantic, long. I could make people cry at a presentation with these stories about how they used to dry the leather in Ireland, in the glens. And when they took it out, it had this special pattern of the pebbles, and they called it pebble grain. And those stories were complete and total bullshit. My father made them up. But I knew that if you had a romantic story, it was more compelling. And the beautiful thing about telling a designer story is that it's authentic, it's real. It's doing well by doing good because you're promoting the designer. And if you think about, if you were to buy an Eames lounge and ottoman, I don't know if you guys know that piece, you should learn it if you're in the design world, and just call it a chair, I don't think it would have the long-term value. But when it's designed by Charles and Ray Eames, who studied at Cranbrook and helped invent modern and won the contest at the Museum of Modern Art for the chair of the future, and Bloomingdale's was the seller of the chair, and Herman Miller with George Nelson as the design director was the maker of the chair. That's a story. That's forever, and that's long-term value, right? Design is one thing. The story of design has to be paired with it to create, I think, that next level of value.
You've referred to Heller as your dream company. Tell me why.
I mean, you guys know by now I love modern. And Alan Heller, who owned the company before me, was a crazy guy. He had the ability to work with people, to find great designers, Massimo and Leila Vignelli, Frank Gehry, Mario Bellini, to name a few. But he never did anything to grow the business. He actually he didn't launch a product for the last 20 years of his business. I loved him, he was a friend, but I knew what could be done with this group of modern furniture. In addition, I've made leather, which depends upon cows. Cows eating the right food, living in the right climate, not having barbed wire fences, not being branded, not being infested by bugs that year. And then shoes, which are unbelievably difficult to make. Very low mechanization because the styles constantly change and there's 10 sizes in every model. to Design Within Reach Furniture, open 7 days a week, 900 employees, and every type of manufacturing process you can imagine from all over the world. And I was good at that stuff. I did it. It's all good. But what's the perfect business? For me is where all the design is up front. Nick can tell you, we're torturing ourselves with new product where all the design is up front. Making this chair is 100% the work before you start making the chair, because it goes into a mold. So now, you make the mold. Before you make the mold, you make a 3D model of the furniture, you test it, you refine it, you scan it, you do it again, you do it 10 times. But once you're done and the mold gets made, it's the same every single time. You can make it anywhere in the world, and it's always the same. And the price point is accessible. So you're getting the highest level of design, relatively easy modes of production that you can make anywhere in the world. And for me, that was the dream. Like, let's take everything I've done thus far and think about what I want to do for the rest of my life. That's how I'd like to work.
That's great. And you bought the company from Alan's partner, Barbara.
Yes.
You had to negotiate with all of the designers or families of the designers to get the rights to the products. Can you talk about the process?
Yeah. So Alan didn't keep records, and he angered all the designers because he never paid them. I love you, Alan, but you're a nightmare. And so they were all a little bit angry at Alan, just like they were angry at Design Within Reach in the old days.
Right.
So I had to work with either the children of the designers, because the designers are deceased, and or the designers themselves, and get them to give me permission to make those products. We bought Heller, we bought nothing. We didn't buy the rights to make the furniture. So we had to convince the Vignelli family, like to trust us with the legacy of their parents. Frank Gehry is 92 years old. He's a lovely man. He's probably the most famous living architect. I called up his people. I said, I'd like to continue making Gehry furniture. Can I do a Zoom call? It was like just as COVID was finishing. And they're like, nope, Gehry doesn't do Zoom. You gotta come to LA. I'm like, no problem. I said, I'll see you Tuesday. and I think I shocked them. But I was there Tuesday. And Gehry had done no research on me, and they hadn't fed him anything. So he had no idea about Design Within Reach. He had no idea about Edelman Leather, which was kind of really cool. I went into a room, 92-year-old legend comes in, and I talked to him. And he gives me a really hard time for 30 minutes. And I kind of liked it. You know, I like a challenge, and I worshipped him. And then at 30 minutes, he clicked, and we were friends. And in this world, to make friends with Frank Gehry is like one of the great experiences you can have. And then he took me at 92 with his son Sam and walked me through his entire studio and showed me all the scale model buildings that either he had done or was working on. This is, you're talking about Guggenheim Bilbao, the Disney Center, the Disney Concert Center. He was working on the corporate campus for all of Louis Vuitton. And with each building was like his favorite thing. And he'd reach over, like 92 years old, and lift the top off and show me about the acoustics of the building. He was like this room is. He was obsessed with acoustics. And he just geeked out on every little part. And this is 45 minutes walking tour with a 92-year-old guy. And then as we walked out, we sat in the alley in front of his office, all in his furniture we had made, or the company had made, and spent another half an hour, and he said yes at the end. You can do it. So, I mean, those experiences, they're once in a lifetime. And, you know, I mean, if you're in the movies or whatever, you can meet Brad Pitt or whomever. That's all fine and dandy. But, you know, Frank Gehry, the Vignellis, Mario Bellini, I wish I would be able to meet the Vignellis.
Well, let's talk Vignelli's for a minute here. This is not your first trip to RIT. You came recently for the first time to have a look at the Vignelli Center and archives. How did you react when you first came in?
I get overwhelmed. It's like too much of something you love, right? It's like going to the best candy shop in the world with a sweet tooth. You know, which one will you possibly take a bite of first? I mean, and to go into the archives, not only see like what it's all connected, but the history of this brand, right? Every original box, the hand drawn Helvetica. Like if you know what that means, just Google it. But these people could hand draw Helvetica. And to see the beginnings of designs, the ends of designs, designs that weren't produced, colors. I mean, it's such a validation of what we're doing. You know, I could walk in, I could cry in there. It's like too good. And then to see the products that weren't released in the permanent collection, I don't know, makes me feel as proud as I could possibly be. And the fact that they're understood and celebrated, and I saw the Benetton family was a big part. It needs to be done more. You know, you have a lot more in Europe. You have a great company called Vitra with an entire campus. But in the United States, we fall short in celebrating great design. And not here at all. This is like the right way to go about it. I could live up there, 4th floor.
Well, I have to say, by way of delivering a compliment, when you came with your team in the first visit, you had Jamie here, who was a RIT graduate graphic designer, and she was scrutinizing the original packaging, Heller packaging, and really asking all the right questions because she felt it was her duty to reproduce it accurately and to build on the foundations that were set by doing the right work with the packaging design and the product identity. So it was really nice to see how thoughtful your team was in looking at the original artifacts.
That was the instruction, like, why mess with perfection? If you have perfection in front of you and it's open to you, you're an idiot not to use it. So speak in superlatives and tell the truth. Massimo and Leila Vignelli are the most seen graphic designers in history. The most seen graphic designers in history, meaning the New York City subway map, Ford, American Airlines, Ducati, Knoll, Heller, and more. But like, no one's done that. And they didn't even invent Helvetica, right? But God was in the details with the spacing, the scale, the merging of the numbers or letters, the colors. And to come up here and discount that in any way, I thought would have been, you know, horribly disrespectful to the brand and to them. And even, so our guideline for everything we do is what would Massimo do? And if you have that, you have a clear path. I was blown away, as I said.
One of the things that was so exciting for us to see was the launch of the rocker. I mean, I was fortunate enough to spend time with Alan in his office years ago when he was prototyping it. You know, in the years that ensued and when he passed away, it was sort of unclear what would happen with the brand and with this wonderful product that I remembered seeing prototypically. Tell us about the journey of this chair, which is really a new product, but one of the very last things that Massimo designed before he died.
So Alan gave up quickly on certain things. And I'll never forget the day we went to go visit him on his Fifth Avenue office. I had 3 buyers with me and my business partner, and he brought this chair out. And I'm like, this is the best chair I've ever seen. I love this chair. And I sat in it, and I'm like, love it. And I gotta tell you, my team didn't get it. Now, the guy that was with me is still a great friend. He's now the current design director for all of Herman Miller. Right? He was a former intern of mine that went in 10 years to that job. He just didn't like the chair. He didn't get it. And it was stuck in my head and stuck in my head. And Alan never had the ability to like, just say, okay, that company didn't like it, let's buy 100 of them and see what we can do. He didn't even have e-commerce. So since we had e-commerce and e-commerce partners, I'm like, let's launch the chair. It's awesome. I don't know if they can scroll the website down, but there's a video of us in a park. Because if you just look at the chair on its own in a photograph, you have no idea of the scale of the chair, right? So I'm 6'4", 6 foot, right? We're not the same size,
right?
But we both fit in the chair very comfortably. How do you show that? So we went, well, I'm not gonna show it now. We went to a park and we videoed the chair all through the park with different size people trying the chair out and fitting them. And it cost us, I don't know, $500 for the day. We put it all over the internet, and the chair started to sell. The chair had never been photographed. We photographed the chair. And then we told the story of the Vignellis. We have a tiny clip somewhere, I think it's from the archives, of them drawing the silhouette of the chair, almost in one stroke.
Yep.
And that's like Raymond Loewy designing a Studebaker in the day. Like, it was of that level, just perfect. And that was the chair. So, I mean, we're just starting with this one. It will be big. And you know, who wouldn't want it?
I would love to open this to questions to keep with the sort of informality of this conversation. So if anybody has any questions, we do have a mic to pass around. Anybody have any questions at this time? And then we'll go over here. We want to record it.
Thank you for the great, inspiring talk.
Oh, thank you.
It happens to be that today is the World Design Day. And what a nice incident to have this lovely conversation. As a hardcore modernist, I really enjoyed your commentary on fashion being temporary and design, especially if it's modern, it's got to be forever. I'm curious to see what is your take on the future of design, because to some degree, fashion is hijacking design industry. It's making it more fashionable so that it's easier to sell, it's easier to promote. So as an entrepreneur taking the leadership of this amazing company, what is your take on this very unclear future of design, being the victim of fashion?
I'm clear as a bell. You know, that's all temporary. So people used to say at Design Within Reach, oh, you guys are the leaders in mid-century modern. And that used to make me so angry, because mid-century modern, almost all of it died. It wasn't good enough. It was of an era. It looked like an era. It didn't transcend time. You know, the same thing now. The true great design pieces of today will look great in 10 years. The other ones won't. They'll go away. I mean, if you want to see like House of Versace doing furniture for the Kardashians, that's a 15-minute blip in design time. It's a joke. But if you see Hermes doing Jean-Michel Franck, that's probably forever. Like, that's not hijacking. That's pretty cool. Most fashion brands fail. Ralph Lauren has failed over and over. But I'm not worried about it at all, because great design just transcends time. In automobiles, there's a reason the Porsche 911 looks the same from 1950-something to today. The Jeep looks the same. All these other temporary designs don't retain their value. They don't keep. It lasts for everything. The Rolex is the same for 30 years. It transcends trend. You need trend, right? Because people don't want classic all the time. You need something trendy, but it will never kill the classic, never kill modern, in my opinion.
So maybe as a follow-up to Reza's question, I was just meeting with a student today who said, what do you think about timelessness in design? And I said, well, it's an aspiration.
Yeah.
How do you select or forward design ideas towards that kind of North Star?
So I'm not a gambler. I never gamble like money or those kinds of things. But on design, you have to take a chance and trust your gut. So I'm not a designer. I can't design, but I can see design. So if it's aesthetically beautiful, designed for a purpose, there's no ego in the design, and you can picture it almost anywhere, now including indoor and outdoor, that qualifies as a chance to be modern. And then that's where you gamble. You roll the dice. Now, you don't know for a long time. First, it has to be appreciated in its moment. That's super hard. And then it has to continue and become something that lasts forever, which is modern. It's very, 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 very hard. And most people think of contemporary design as modern, where it's not. but you have to roll the dice.
Okay. There was a question over here.
As a lover of
As a fellow lover of modernism, um, you may have noticed that often modernist design is criticized for being a little flat. It sometimes the word lifeless gets thrown around, and I personally disagree with that. But I think in some ways a lot of it has to do with sort of the universality of it, and also in some ways as simple a thing as the color palettes used. Um, and this is particularly relevant because, as we can see up here, we have some great examples of some very colorful and what I would say are very fun, sort of timeless modern designs. And so, what would be your take as someone who is not on the design end of things in incorporating fun into modern design?
In my opinion, if you walk into a store and buy a piece of furniture and lay it in an empty room by itself with maybe 3 other pieces that you bought and maybe a rug, it's kind of cold. You got to bring yourself into it and bring all the things that you like, whatever kind of art you like. You like stuffed animals, pillows, any quirky thing should mix, right? Because iconic design goes with everything. My house, we have from my parents old masters paintings next to Eames, next to taxidermy mold heads from the flea markets in Paris. It's definitely modern, but like, I don't think you live one way. I think you restrict yourself. I think you have to bring in your environment, accentuate things around you. I think just doing one thing will be cold, will be boring, will not be fun. But you have to let yourself go a little bit. And I think you pick one piece oftentimes and design around it. And I think if you have a fun mindset, you get there. Is that a fair answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dan?
I hate when people say modern is cold. It just bugs me. That means the people that are living there are cold. You know what I mean? You live how you want. And you bring in your own pieces.
The history of design has a long conflict between quality design, good design, intents of universality for design, and then being able to market it and message it to get that message out to people. And I kind of smiled when you said Alan wasn't so good at really pushing the good things that he had, and I'd like to talk to you about that later. But I'm curious, I think you're on the right track when you're creating these very personal stories about the designers and then about the products that they're creating. But what more do you think you can do or you are doing to help create that unity of the quality product, the timeless product, and getting the message out to people of how important this really is?
Well, thank goodness I don't have the responsibility of all modern anymore, right? Like, that was a lot of product. But we're lucky enough to have social media. I mean, social media is phenomenal. And we're out there. We post all the time. We go to events. We try to get our products photographed in environments where they look beautiful. You try to celebrate the designers again. But no longer are we tied to a venue. We have the whole world through social media to get it out there. I think that's the easiest way. I mean, it's expensive now to get your message out, but it's easier than it's ever been. We enter all the awards now. We're about to enter award season for the show in New York, for the show in Chicago, and getting those recognitions. We're trying to get magazines interested. So we're about to launch a lot of new product, including this chair. There's a show in New York called the International Contemporary Furniture Fair being staged at the Javits Center. The Javits Center is a large warehouse with booths going through the center. And I couldn't do it. And I love the people running it. We are going to do something there. But I'm like, if we're going to have new product that I think is the best product in the world, that I think is truly modern, that I think will be around in 100 years, I can't do it in a convention center. So we rented a gallery a few blocks away, and by chance, it's called the Heller Gallery. I mean, it was serendipitous. And so we're going to launch our new furniture in a gallery-like setting so that day one, we show the value of great design and elevate the experience and celebrate it. To go into poor lighting in a convention center to launch product from me is a disservice and a discredit to the product and a disrespect to the designer. So always show it elevated, always show it in the environment you'd like, and celebrate the value of design. You know, so I think, I'm not sure if I answered your question 100%, but that's our effort.
Question back here, John.
So we just had a conversation about
Well, I don't do it myself. We totally outsource it. But I know our client is over 40, highly educated, makes X amount of dollars a year, plays, watches tennis, not football for the most part, drinks wine, not beer, et cetera, et cetera. And we can target those clients. Interior designers, right? The mavens, because once an interior designer starts to specify your product, they get published, and then people want your product. So we're not the most technologically savvy, but we do 100% pay attention to that on e-commerce, because I don't want to market to everybody, right? You find your niche and then expand from your niche. And for the most part, modern runs urban, right? The cities, and then their people's either, when they move to the country, they bring that taste with them, but it originates in the urban environments.
I've got a question for you. Thinking about young designers and folks who are in an educational context, where are you looking in the world? What kinds of events? You mentioned ICFF. What kinds of venues are sort of critical places where you see more design, more dialogue, more discourse, more product? Where are you thinking about being over the course of the year to stay current and stay connected?
I go to trade shows, and last year we discovered a young person who just graduated from Rhode Island School of Design, and she had a very crude wall hanger done in like a composite, like to make this really cool shape. And I said to Andrew McPhee, who was with me, I said, it's Heller. Took no time, bam, we fell in love. We will launch that product next month. Within 1 year, we discovered it, sourced it, packaged it, and we'll have it back at ICFF. But it's very hard to design modern. Most like recent graduates, they have to marinate a while, right? Get some of that stuff out of them, right? And pare it down. Maybe you get lucky sometimes. I think it takes a little time. But I found Jumbo Studios in New York, Justin Donnelly. He's extremely talented designer. We're going to launch the Fortune Cookie Chair next year. I found him on Instagram. I DM'd him, and we became friends. And it's a great product. He was doing a product that was going to retail for $35,000 out of spun aluminum. And I said, Justin, I love it, but it should be in our materiality. So we worked for 7 months translating it, creating a mold, and we're going to go to market next year. So everywhere.
So you're talking about physical places like New York Design Week, but you're also online searching for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything that's available. I think there are no rules. And I think the economy dictates a lot of what's going to happen. So in a bad economy, design surges because the big design firms that are hiring the talent don't hire. So the people that would have gone to a Gensler, to an HOK, whatever, are in these little apartments they can afford. It used to be Brooklyn, and they make. Look how many lighting companies came out of Brooklyn during the last Great Recession. It was a hotbed. Brooklyn got this huge design scene because you could afford to live in Brooklyn. Now, where can you afford to live next time? I'm not sure. It was Athens, Berlin, right, where young people could go and just experiment for a while. So, I don't know. And also, there's so few designs that are good. Great designers that I respect as much as anybody in the world, and we were talking about it earlier, sometimes I think like 80% of their stuff I don't like. The 20% is amazing. And when I say roll the dice, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to develop products where I spend a ton of money, where I trust my gut, and I get to market, and they're not going to sell. They're not going to be good. Which is one of the reasons why I fight for authenticity in design, because if you do make something good and someone copies it, then you don't have the money to fund the next exploration. You kill the future of design because you can't be right every time. I told the story today of a great young designer we hired a few years ago, and I fell in love with him. I fell in love with this table we made with him. Brass and wood, but very modern, very cool. And the merchandiser made a mistake and put it out in the stores with a rectangular glass top. Just didn't look right. The oval glass top made it look amazing. And we didn't have the budget to redo them all. Ended up dropping the table. That's just a miss. That's a disservice. We made a mistake. And that's going to happen sometimes. It's not always, you have to be okay to fail. And yeah, failure is a huge part. You fail small if you can. Succeed big and fail small, but fail.
More questions from the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, everyone hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm a designer with a background in leather goods, and
Oh, yay.
just hearing your story, I really appreciate it. And I mean, coming from small beginnings, it's like amazing to hear your story and how you progressed through your career. I kind of, being with that background and that sensibility, I kind of teeter from time to time on whether leather's future is certain. I think you would agree with the fact that leather is something that can be forever if you treat it right. And I think a lot of people don't realize that leather gets put in things that are disposable and things that are, like you said, in fashion, things that die very fast. And I guess my question is, what do you think the future of leather is? Do you think, in terms of sustainability, what's the future of using leather in a way that we can really appreciate its value as a material rather than a quirk or a selling point?
It's a great question. I mean, as long as people have eaten meat, they've had leather. Right? Leather is a byproduct of meat 100%. There are no cows ever raised for the hide because 90% of the hides are of poor quality. So the value isn't there. So day one, leather is sustainable. As long as people eat meat, you're not just going to throw it away. And then the better quality leather you use, the longer it lasts. Okay, so if you buy a pair of custom-made fine English shoes in leather, they'll last 100 years. If you buy leather that's been shaved and painted and stamped, it's disposable. The future of leather, I think, is quality. And it is sustainable. It will last forever. And it's basically recyclable as well. I think the future is strong, but you have to stay towards quality. Once you go cheap, it's kind of a tie with vinyl, right? Like it's just bad. But if you stay with the great quality, it has super longevity and it holds its value. I mean, look at what vintage Hermes bags and are trading for. They last forever. So I also would say don't tie yourself to one material. I mean, if you're a designer and artist, you know, allow yourself to explore if you want to. Is that fair? Good.
Here's a question over here.
Can you hear me? All right.
Sure.
I guess I was also just like kind of interested in that materiality conversation. And I kind of almost wanted to ask a follow-up question for that. Um, how, as a young designer and how, as designers entering the field, how do you think that we should go about working with material? And obviously, Heller is much more of a simplified
Yeah.
kind of lineup. But, you know, for example, with DWR, you got so many feedstocks, so many sources, so many different manufacturing techniques. How should someone navigate that? And what have you seen that's been successful before? I think of the spun aluminum that you just mentioned, and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, they just couldn't do it. So, like, just study. They don't teach materiality, the details in school. It's up to most of the vendors to then teach you how things are made. And I gave a speech the other day where I talked about, you know, anytime a vendor offers you to visit the facility, go, right, and learn. Do as much experimentation as you possibly can and learn how things are made and learn what the best is and learn what's not. And then when you see stuff that's in the middle, you're smart enough to grade it, right? How much polyester is in the mix? Does it need it? Maybe it needs it. You know, what's the purpose it's being used for? I'm the what am my title? Chairman of the board of a fabric company called Krypton. It's a performance fabric. It's soft, but what people really like about it is you can pour wine on it and it beads off. That's not for everybody, but it's kind of cool. So like if I wanted a performance fabric, I'd buy Krypton. If I want something that's like a linen with no protection, the softest hand in the world, I'd buy something else. So you have to become really, really knowledgeable. And then once you have the knowledge, you're free.
Thanks.
You have one in the front, one in the back.
Thank you. You've talked a lot about like modern, right? And like this idea of legacy also with the Heller brand. Is there any particular areas that you see being more of a focus going into the future with the brand? Is it focusing on furniture, accessories, or are there other areas that you're trying to get into? Or is it focusing on different materials and yeah, 5-year plan, 10-year plan? Love to hear it.
Yeah, man.
Whatever you can say.
It changes. You know, we're 11 and a half months in. And I thought we'd be more focused on furniture. I mean, we are super focused on furniture, but this stuff's amazing. And there's more pieces, and the Europeans want it, and the MoMA sold out 3 times. Australia wants it, South Korea wants it, and I used to get very bored with accessories. I don't have the attention span for small items. But I'm thinking about this differently, as like bigger. So we're going to work there. We're launching a new piece within Hellerware from this young girl, Anna Dawson, that we spoke about. And then the furniture, I want comfortable furniture. Like, that sounds obvious, but so much furniture just isn't comfortable. It's designed for the ego of the designer, and that's not modern. So I want comfortable furniture, comfortable chairs, comfortable lounge, easy to use side tables. So I think we have a huge runway going forward with comfort. And we have complete freedom of form with our modes of production. So if we never have an excuse for it not being comfortable. Just takes a little more time, testing and testing. So 5-year plan will be more furniture, more accessories, and a broader distribution channel, meaning more international. And more domestic. We've barely started. I mean, we're going to launch with Design Within Reach February of 2024. They're the biggest voice out there. What can I do with e-com, and how can I really use e-com to not only further the value of our brand, but to actually sell things? Right? How do I bring things to a lake house or a ski house in Montana when they're nowhere near a modern store? And they're buying from us. So, I mean, it's a broad answer, My 5-year plan is, because we're so small, is to just increase all areas. After 5, I really want to, I'll refocus, and maybe it's lounge, like, could we have no like chaise type pieces, maybe bigger. I'm dying to do just straight up art pieces, like work with a Gaetano Pesci and take his crazy foot or something, or something just that's sculptural. We do the lips by Studio 65. They're really cool. What's the next version of that? I think we're just not big enough. We can't really afford to do that now, but like no question we will. I have these fake sheep in my backyard that, by the pool, and I love them, and they make me smile. So Heller's job is to always make people smile with the design. We'll look to other ways to do that.
Okay, so sorry, still working on laryngitis.
Right.
My question is going to take, I hope I'm not being impertinent, and it's going to take the whole notion of sustainability in a slightly different direction. I mean, I agree with you. I love beautifully made leather goods and the quality of leather and so on and so forth. But we're currently living in a time where we're worried about climate change, and we're taking issues of sustainability to another level. And one of the things that people are challenging, for instance, is the eating of meat and what is causing greenhouse gases. So I guess my question to you is, at what point do you make a decision to kind of start to consider those things and start looking at other types of materials that don't impact our environment in the same way?
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. People should eat less meat. And by the way, I'm no longer in the leather business, right? I'm in a tougher one.
Yeah.
So our commitment here is like with every Vignelli rocker sold, it comes with an NFT that gives lifelong recycling instructions. So you can fully recycle the product, 100%. And as we're using more post-consumer waste in our mixes, I won't use it unless it's recyclable again. Many, many products out there say, oh, we're used post-consumer, we're recycler, and then you can't recycle it again. It goes in a landfill. That's a joke. In terms of leather, I put a pragmatic face on it. As long as people eat meat, use the byproduct. It would be be weird to have people eat meat and then dump that stuff in a landfill. Right? I mean, it's been used forever. People should eat less meat. No question. Or teach cows not to fart. Give them better food. Get rid of the methane. But as long as they're eating the meat, use the byproduct.
There's a question over here.
That'll be the quote of the night, I guess.
You talk about these stories and this history in the leather industry and these great stories of the New York flea markets. Do you have any other stories or moments in your life that you think gave you such a good understanding of timelessness and modern?
Yeah, I would say marrying the right person. And I married a woman with incredibly good taste. Not because she picked me. that was her low moment, by the way. That she was slumming, I guess. But she's kept me cleaner and taught me a lot over the years. Because she could easily be a fashionista or those kinds of things. And we shop together the flea markets, and we shop together everywhere we've ever been. And I think refining my eye and then evolving my eye along with hers was a huge transition for me and helped me leave fashion and kind of solidify what I liked. I can't imagine being somebody with a different aesthetic. Like, that's like the number one thing you want to find out. Like, do you have the same? Everybody's like, oh, I like a blonde or brunette. It's just garbage, Do you see things in a similar way? Do you think the same things are beautiful? You love to go to Italy because every night they sit outside and they look at the sunset and they appreciate the sunset. it's appreciating those things and trying to take away the rest of the noise that allows you, I think, to appreciate great design. So, I mean, it's a convoluted answer, but like appreciating the simple things, having someone that you can grow with and share the love of design, I think that helps a lot.
It's a great answer. And it might be the right answer to end our conversation on tonight.
We just started.
As much as I'd like to keep it going, we've been at it for a bit, and people have other things to do around here. I want to thank you, John, for a fantastic conversation and for sharing Heller and Vignelli with the world, and for joining us here at RIT.
Thank you for having me. I love it.
Thank you all, and have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next year for Design Conversations, the list to be shared soon.
Thank you.